In the 1300s, a horrifying epidemic swept across Europe called the Black Plague or bubonic plague. To stop the plague, a group of people called the Flatulents formed. The Flatulents tortured themselves to gain God's pity in hopes of stopping the epidemic. This, however, did nothing. By 1350, the disease killed about half of Europe's population. Because the church did not provide aid, many people lost faith in the clergy.
Martin Luther calls Saint Anne for help during a horrific thunderstorm, promising her he'll become a monk if he survives, which he does. Due to his life-changing event, he studies to become a monk instead of a lawyer. Martin Luther sees Johann Tetzel, a Roman Catholic friar, selling indulgences, which are certificates of salvation bought by people. Martin Luther sees this as a corrupt practice and decides that salvation should be by faith. In 1517, Martin Luther writes his 95 Theses, which attacks the sales of indulgences and church positions, and posts them on the doors of the chapel at St. Peter's Basilica. Martin Luther's 95 Theses spreads quickly because of the use of the printing press, which quickly increased the amount of copies he could make of his work immensely. Pope Leo X and Holy Roman Emperor Charles V convict Luther of heresy, and Luther responds by protecting his beliefs in trial. Martin Luther flees and gains protection from Frederick the Wise.
In 1536, John Calvin published Institutes of the Christian Religion in an attempt to standardize the ideas of Protestantism. One difference between Luther and Calvin was Calvin's theory of predestination, which meant that God had pre-selected who would enter heaven, contrary to Luther, who believed that salvation was achieved by faith alone. In 1520, Huldrych Zwingli openly declared himself a reformer and questioned fasting and clerical celibacy. Unlike Luther and Calvin, Zwingli did not believe in transubstantiation, the theory that the Eucharist bread and wine changed completely to Christ's blood and body. Instead, he believed that the bread and wine was symbolic.
In 1525, the German peasant revolt erupted as a result of a spirit reform movement. The movement consisted of southern and central peasants as well as urban workers in Germany. The peasants believed that they could elude the paying of taxes to their lords and to the Catholic Church with the support of Martin Luther. However, the revolt was deeply condemned by Martin Luther, who supported the princes and church officials. The revolt was suppressed, and Luther ordered the princes to brutally kill the peasants, which results in Luther's loss of followers in rural areas. In 1527, King Henry VIII of England ordered Pope Clement VII to annul his marriage with Catherine of Aragon because she did not give him a male heir. However, Clement VII refused, leading Henry VIII to separate the English Church from Rome in 1534 and take the position of supreme head of the Church of England, or the Anglican Church.
The Anabaptists were a group of Reformed Christians who believed in adult baptism, since babies couldn't decide their religion for themselves. In 1534, the Anabaptists seized Munster and abolished private property. However, Zwingli and other Protestant reformers viewed the Anabaptists as chaotic, so they started to persecute them. In 1545, the Council of Trent was formed by Pope Paul III to clarify the church doctrine and set a goal of reconverting Protestants.
The Smalcaldic League started in 1546 between the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V and the Smalcaldic League, or the defensive alliance of the Lutheran princes in the Holy Roman Empire. Although Charles V was victorious in this war, he was forced to sign the Peace of Augsburg in 1555, which allowed the princes to determine the religion of their land. Because the Peace of Augsburg only recognized Lutherans and Catholics, the Calvinists were angered. The 30 Years' War consists of four phases: Bohemian, Danish, Swedish, and French. During the 30 Years' War, the two main sides consist of the Catholics under Ferdinand II, with the Catholic League, and a Protestant League with all the German princes. During the Bohemia phase, the Catholics win a series of battles, and during the Danish phase, the fighting continues while Ferdinand II passes the Edict of Restitution. During the Swedish phase, Protestant leader Gustavus Adolphus from Sweden provides military guidance and supports the Protestant Union until he is killed in battle. The French decided to enter the war in the French phase due to their rivalry with the Habsburgs and fight for the Protestants even though they are Catholic. Moreover, Cardinal Richelieu encourages the French to enter the war for expansion and to prevent Habsburg from granting more power rather than religious reasons. Ultimately, the Peace of Westphalia is created and it basically adds Calvinism to the Peace of Augsburg. The French emerged powerful from this war, and this officially marks the end of religious warfare.